You were taught that empathy is a virtue, that caring for others makes you a good person. That feeling of what someone else feels proves you're evolved. You believed it, you lived by it, and you paid for it. You stayed late to help the co-worker who never reciprocates. You listened to the friend who only calls when they need something. You gave emotional labor to the partner who weaponized your care the moment you asked for anything back. You convinced yourself this was maturity. It wasn't. It was training. You were conditioned to be accessible, predictable, and useful, not respected, not powerful, just convenient. Carl Jung understood something most people never confront. Empathy is not neutral. It is not inherently good. It is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used against you. When you feel too much for someone, you lose the ability to see them clearly. When you prioritize their emotional state over your own leverage, you hand them your frame. When you extend understanding without discretion, you become the one they manage, not the one they respect. You think empathy builds connection. It does, but not the kind you want. It builds dependency. It builds expectations. It builds resentment. Because the person you empathize with learns that your emotions are negotiable, that your boundaries are soft, that your attention is free. And once they learn that, they stop valuing you. They start testing you. They start talking. Jung didn't reject empathy. He warned against its shadow, the part of you that uses empathy to avoid confrontation, the part that hides behind care to escape accountability, the part that gives endlessly because it fears being seen as cold, selfish, or cruel. That's not compassion. That's fear. And people sense it. They don't consciously know what they're sensing, but they feel the weakness, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. This script will walk you through 7 psychological reversals about empathy that most people never see, not because they're hidden, but seeing them requires you to admit something uncomfortable, that you've been using empathy as a defense mechanism, that you've been trained to prioritize others' comfort over your own authority, that you've been mistaking emotional labor for strength when it's actually the reason you're losing leverage in every relationship you enter. Most people will leave before this is over. They'll feel the discomfort and click away. They'll tell themselves this is toxic, cynical, and manipulative. That's fine. Let them go. They're not ready to see the game. You are. You're still here because part of you already knows what I'm about to say is true. You've felt it. You've lived it. You just didn't have the language for it yet. If you ignore this, nothing changes. You continue being the person people come to when they need something and forget when they don't. You continue being the emotional utility, the safe option, the backup plan. If you stay and integrate this, you separate. You stop being the one who gives first. You stop being the one who cares more. You stop being the one who loses frame every time someone asks for your emotional energy. Put your phone face down, turn off distractions, listen. If this hits you, write "I am the strategist" once in the comments, just to mark the day your mindset changed. Now let's begin. You've been taught that understanding someone's pain makes you noble. When someone shares their struggles, the correct response is to feel with them, to validate, to soothe, to reassure. You do this reflexively. Someone tells you they're overwhelmed, and you immediately offer solutions. Someone tells you they're hurt, and you immediately absorb their emotions. You think this is a connection. It's not. It's a submission. When you empathize without boundaries, you accept their frame. You enter their emotional reality and begin operating by their rules. You stop being the person who evaluates the situation and become the person who reacts to it. They set the tone. They define the problem. They control the interaction. And you participate as if this is natural, as if this is what good people do. Jung called this identification. When you identify too closely with another person's emotions, you lose access to your own perspective. You stop seeing them as a separate individual with their own agenda and start seeing them as an extension of your responsibility. You feel what they feel, you carry what they carry, and they let you, because why wouldn't they? You volunteered. Here's the mechanism. When you give empathy freely and consistently, you train the other person to expect it. They learn that your emotional resources are available on demand. They don't have to earn your care. They don't have to reciprocate. They don't have to respect your time or energy. They just have to present a problem, and you'll engage. You become predictable. And predictability is the opposite of power. The person who controls the frame is not the one who feels the most. It's the one who feels the least. Or more accurately, the one who chooses when and how much to feel. They don't absorb your emotions. They don't rush to fix your problems. They listen. They observe. They decide whether your situation warrants their investment. And that decision-making process is what gives them authority. They're evaluating. You're reacting. That's the difference. You see this at work. The co-worker who always needs help, who always has a crisis, who always needs someone to cover for them, listen to them, and validate their stress. You do it. You tell yourself it's teamwork, it's support, it's kind. But notice what happens when you need something. Notice how quickly they're unavailable. Notice how their empathy has limits that yours apparently don't. That's not an accident. That's a power dynamic you created by being too available. You see this in relationships. The partner who shares every anxiety, every fear, every doubt, and you hold space for it. You comfort them. You reassure them. You become their emotional regulator. And it feels good at first. It feels like intimacy. Until you realize you're doing all the emotional labor. Until you realize they've outsourced their self-soothing to you. Until you realize you're not their partner. You're their therapist. And they're not paying you. They're just talking. You see this with friends, the one who only reaches out when they're struggling, who disappears when things are good, who uses you as an emotional dump site and never asks how you're doing. You tolerate it because you think empathy means availability. It doesn't. Empathy without reciprocity is exploitation. And the moment you realize that, you start seeing how many relationships in your life are structured around your willingness to give more than you receive. Jung understood the shadow side of the helper. The person who gives endlessly isn't always doing it out of love. They're doing it out of fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear of confrontation. Fear of losing the relationship. So they give, and they give, and they call it empathy. But it's not empathy. It's avoidance. It's a way to stay safe. A way to stay is needed. A way to avoid the discomfort of saying no. And the people around you sense this. They might not articulate it, but they feel it. They feel that your empathy comes from a place of neediness, not strength. And that changes how they value you, because people don't respect what's always available. They respect what's scarce. They respect what has boundaries. They respect what they have to earn. When you withdraw empathy strategically, something shifts. Not cruelly, not as punishment, but as a recalibration. You stop being the person who absorbs every emotion. You stop being the one who rushes to comfort. You stop being the one who offers understanding before it's asked for. You become the one who waits, who observes, who decides. And that decision-making process changes the dynamic. Suddenly, people can't assume your care. They can't take your attention for granted. They have to demonstrate value. They have to reciprocate. They have to respect your time, because you're no longer operating from a place of scarcity. You're operating from a place of choice, and choice is power. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. It's about recognizing that empathy, when given indiscriminately, becomes worthless. Not to you, to them, because they stop seeing it as a gift and start seeing it as an entitlement. And once that happens, you've lost the frame entirely. You've been conditioned to believe that withholding empathy is cruelty, that if you don't immediately validate someone's feelings, you're a bad person. That's the trap. That belief keeps you compliant. It keeps you giving. It keeps you weak. Because the moment you question whether someone deserves your emotional energy, you're accused of being heartless. And you cave, you give again, and the cycle continues. But here's the inversion. The people who command the most respect are not the most empathetic. They're the most discerning. They don't feel for everyone. They feel for the people who've earned it. They don't give care freely. They give it strategically. And because of that, Their care matters. It has weight. It has value. When they offer empathy, it means something, because it's rare. Jung spoke about the integration of opposites. You cannot be whole if you only operate from one side of yourself. If you only give, you become depleted. If you only empathize, you lose your ability to judge. If you only care, you lose your ability to detach. Wholeness requires balance. It requires the ability to feel and the ability to withhold, the ability to connect and the ability to distance, the ability to care and the ability to walk away. This is not taught. You're taught to be one-sided, to always be kind, always be understanding, always be available. And that one-sidedness is what makes you controllable, because people know exactly how you'll respond. They know you'll empathize. They know you'll help. They know you'll stay. And that knowledge is what they use to manage you. When you introduce unpredictability, you disrupt that management. When people can't assume your empathy, they start respecting your presence. When they can't take your care for granted, they start valuing your attention. When they realize you're not always going to absorb their emotions, they start regulating themselves. And that's when the dynamic shifts. That's when you stop being the utility and start being the authority. You're not doing this to manipulate. You're doing this to reclaim your time, your energy, your frame, to stop being the person everyone uses and start being the person everyone respects. And that requires you to stop believing that empathy is always good. It's not. It's conditional, it's contextual, and it's only powerful when it's scarce. The person who needs your empathy more than you need to give it is not your equal. They're your dependents. And dependency breeds resentment. Not gratitude, not loyalty. Resentment. Because the person who depends on you starts to resent the fact that they need you. And instead of appreciating your care, they start testing your limits. They start taking more, demanding more, expecting more until you're drained. And then they leave. Because you were never valued. You were just useful. This is the shadow Jung warned about, the helper who becomes the victim, the empath who becomes the doormat, the caring person who becomes the resentful one. Not because they stopped caring, but because they cared without discernment. They gave without boundaries. They empathized without reciprocity, and they paid for it. You felt this. You've been the one who gives more, who cares more, who tries harder, and you've watched as the other person pulls back, as they take you for granted, as they stop valuing what you offer because it's always available. You told yourself you were being patient, being understanding, being mature. You weren't. You were being managed. And the moment you realize that, everything changes. You start to see the patterns, the people who only reach out when they need something, the people who disappear when you need something, the people who treat your empathy as a resource they can extract without cost. You start to see that these aren't relationships, they're transactions, and you're losing every single one, so you stop participating. Not loudly, not dramatically. You just stop being available. You stop responding immediately. You stop offering solutions. You stop absorbing their emotions. You create distance, and you wait. You wait to see who adjusts, who reaches out differently, who starts offering value instead of just taking it, and most won't. Most will drift away, and that's the filter. That's how you know who actually valued you and who just valued what you provided. The ones who stay are the ones who recognize the shift, who realize they can't take you for granted anymore, who starts reciprocating, who starts respecting your boundaries. Those are the relationships worth keeping. The rest were always one-sided. You were just too empathetic to see it. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. This is you recognizing that your emotional energy is finite, that your care has value. Your empathy is not an infinite resource to be distributed to anyone who asks. This is you reclaiming your authority, your frame, your power. Jung said individuation requires you to confront your shadow, the parts of yourself you've denied, the parts you've been taught to suppress. For most people, that shadow includes the ability to detach, to withhold, to prioritize themselves. They've been taught that these qualities are selfish. That makes you a bad person, so they suppress them. And in doing so, they suppress their power. When you integrate that shadow, when you accept that you are allowed to withhold empathy, you become whole. You become someone who can choose, who can discern, who can protect their energy. You stop being the person everyone uses and start being the person everyone respects. And that respect is what changes everything. You don't lose connection, you gain quality. You don't lose relationships, you lose the ones that were draining you. You don't lose your humanity, you gain your authority. And authority is what allows you to be effective, to be respected, to be valued. This is the inversion most people never make. They think empathy is a strength. It's not. Discernment is strength. Boundaries are strength. Boundaries are strength. The ability to say no is a strength. The ability to walk away is a strength. Empathy without these qualities is just compliance, and compliance is a weakness. You've been operating in compliance. You've been giving because you were afraid of what would happen if you didn't. Afraid of conflict, afraid of rejection, afraid of being seen as cold. And that fear has been controlling you. It's been shaping every interaction, every relationship, every decision. You've been living in reaction to other people's emotions instead of in alignment with your own frame. That stops now. You stop accepting their frame. You stop absorbing their emotions. You stop giving empathy to people who don't reciprocate. You stop being the one who cares more. You stop being the one who tries harder. You stop being the one who loses. Instead, you become the one who evaluates, the one who decides, the one who chooses when and where to invest their emotional energy. You become the one who holds the frame. And when you hold the frame, everything changes. People stop managing you. They start respecting you. They stop taking you for granted. They start valuing your presence. This is not a game. This is reality. This is how power works. This is how respect is earned. This is how you stop being the person everyone uses and start being the person everyone remembers. Here's the real-world challenge. Pick one person in your life who takes more than they give. One person who assumes your empathy, who expects your care, who drains your energy, and pull back. Not dramatically, not with an explanation. Just stop being as available. Stop responding immediately. Stop offering solutions. Stop absorbing their emotions. Create distance and watch what happens. Most likely they won't notice. They'll just move on to the next person who will give them what you stop providing. And that tells you everything. That tells you the relationship was never about you. It was about what you offered. And once you stopped offering it, you stopped mattering. Or they'll adjust. They'll reach out differently. They'll start offering value. They'll start respecting your time. And if they do that, you'll know the relationship has potential. You'll know they're capable of reciprocity. You'll know they're worth keeping. Either way, you win. You either remove a drain on your energy or you recalibrate a relationship into something balanced. But you only get that outcome if you're willing to pull back. If you're willing to withhold, if you're willing to stop being the empathetic one and start being the powerful one. If you found value in this, share it. Not because I need you to, but because the people around you do. The people who are still stuck in the empathy trap. The people who are still giving more than they receive. The people who are still being managed instead of being respected. Send this to them, not as an attack, as a wake-up call. If this hit you, write, "I am the strategist" once in the comments, just to mark the day your mindset changed. You're not the helper anymore. You're not an empath. You're not the one who gives endlessly without return. You're the strategist. The one who sees the game. The one who plays it consciously. The one who values his own frame more than anyone else's comfort. That's who you are now. Not because I told you, but because you chose it. Welcome to clarity.